Have you ever wondered how the smallest corner of your home could feel like a storybook retreat? In today's video, we're diving into timeless DIY interior inspiration, simple ideas you can recreate to turn ordinary spaces into something extraordinary. Welcome to Home Crafted, a place where creativity meets comfort, and where every detail is made to feel like home. This video is fully time-stamped, so feel free to jump to the parts you need most. And if you have questions, I'd love to see them in the comments. Maybe to you, I'm just another face on a screen. But behind this content, there's a real story and a real family. This isn't just a video, it's a piece of my heart. Every like, every comment, every subscribe, it truly matters. When you hit that subscribe button, you're not just supporting a creator, you're keeping a dream alive. You're giving a small family hope, one click at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for truly seeing me. Step inside and take a deep breath. This is not just a home, it's a quiet sanctuary where soft greens and creamy whites tell a story of simplicity and renewal. In the entryway, the first welcome is a gentle one. A creamy white bench waits patiently, softened by green gingham pillows. Sunlight falls across the woven basket in the corner, the fresh eucalyptus wreath by the door, and the light rug underfoot. It feels like a small gesture, yet it sets the tone for everything that follows: warmth, charm, and a sense that you're truly home. Move further in and the heart of the cottage reveals itself. The kitchen, though tiny, glows with character. Open shelves display mint enamel bowls and vintage pitchers, each piece carrying a memory of family meals or simple gatherings. A small potted plant tumbles gently over the edge, its leaves alive against the creamy white beadboard. The lace curtain by the window sways with the breeze, letting the light in just enough to make this corner feel both timeless and alive. These are not just objects on a shelf, they are everyday companions, and they remind us that beauty often hides in the smallest of details. And then, the living room, calm and luminous. Soft sage walls frame a white slip-covered sofa, layered with mint pillows that whisper of spring meadows. On the rustic wooden table, a clear vase holds nothing more than fresh daisies, yet their simplicity fills the whole space with joy. The room is quiet, uncluttered, and welcoming, a place where stories are shared, books are read, and afternoons drift by in golden light. What makes this palette of green and white so inviting is not just the colors themselves, but the feelings they evoke. Green is the language of growth, of nature's gentle rhythm. White carries light, purity, and openness. Together, they balance serenity with freshness, turning even the smallest corner into something meaningful. You don't need grand gestures to create this. A bench with patterned pillows, a second-hand enamel bowl on a shelf, or a simple vase of flowers on the table, each choice is accessible, achievable, and transformative. It's about letting your home breathe with the seasons, about layering small comforts until the ordinary becomes extraordinary. So as you watch these ideas unfold, imagine them not just as designs to copy, but as little invitations. Invitations to slow down, to notice light falling across a curtain, to savor the charm of an old enamel pot, to welcome spring not just outside your door but inside your very walls. This is the spirit of a cottage, not perfection, but presence. A home that feels alive, not staged. And the best part? You can create it yourself, one gentle, meaningful touch at a time. The entryway is often the first whisper of a home's character. It doesn't need grandeur to make an impression. Sometimes, all it takes is a thoughtful touch of charm and warmth. Here, a vintage white wooden bench rests quietly by the door, softened with green gingham pillows. Above it, a rustic coat rack holds straw hats that seem ready for sunny afternoons and gentle walks in the garden. A wreath of eucalyptus adds a hint of freshness, while soft light pours in through the open door, inviting you inside with a sense of ease and welcome. Nearby, a small green-painted stool becomes more than just a seat. On it, a vase of white daisies glows in the sunlight, their petals reaching outward like a cheerful greeting. Next to them, a simple console table, time-worn yet beautiful, provides both practicality and grace. Beneath it, a woven basket holds shoes neatly tucked away, proof that beauty and function can live side by side. Even the doormat, with its cheerful "Hello Spring" message, reminds visitors that small details carry the biggest smiles. Another corner tells its own story. A rustic bench stands against creamy shiplap walls, draped with a soft sage throw and a pillow patterned in quiet florals. Above it, a distressed green-framed mirror reflects the daylight, bouncing it across the room and making the space feel larger, brighter, and more alive. At its feet, a potted fern offers a pop of nature, grounding the scene in simplicity and life. This is the magic of a cottage entryway, not extravagant design, but the layering of humble touches. A basket that keeps order, a mirror that doubles the light, a stool reborn as a flower stand. Each idea is simple, affordable, and wonderfully achievable. It shows us that a welcoming home isn't measured by size, but by the feeling it gives when someone steps through the door. When you slow down and notice these details, you realize how powerful they are. A green cushion on a bench, a vase of daisies, a touch of wood that's been softened by time. They are more than decor, they are everyday poetry, written in the language of comfort. And the best part? You can recreate it yourself, one thoughtful gesture at a time. is where stories settle, where mornings stretch into afternoons, and evenings soften into quiet. In this cottage, the palette of green and white brings a kind of stillness, a calm that feels both refreshing and familiar. Here, a vintage green armchair rests in a corner, its floral fabric softened by time. Beside it, a distressed white coffee table carries a simple mug and a vase of wildflowers, their colors alive against the creamy walls. Sunlight drifts across the wooden floorboards, painting the room in gentle warmth. It doesn't feel styled for perfection, it feels lived in, like a space that has held countless moments of rest and reflection. A sofa dressed in crisp white slipcovers anchors the room with quiet elegance. Cushions in sage and mint shades add softness, their patterns inspired by spring gardens. A rustic side table, painted in faded green, holds vintage books stacked neatly, topped with daisies in a clear glass vase. The lace curtains filter the daylight so it glows softly, casting a gentle veil across the room. It's a reminder of how simple textiles, chosen with care, can transform light itself into part of your decor. Another wall tells its own story. Above a creamy sofa, an antique wooden shelf displays small potted plants, enamelware, and a collection of sage-colored books. Their presence is subtle, yet they bring texture and personality into the room. At the base, a braided rug softens the floor, grounding the space in comfort. You realize how every layer, a throw draped casually, a plant in a simple pot, a weathered table, is not just decoration, but an invitation to slow down and enjoy. And that is the secret of this palette. Green, in all its shades, whispers of nature and growth. White gives it space to breathe, letting the room feel airy and open. Together, they weave serenity without effort. You don't need luxury to achieve this look. A thrifted table, a second-hand chair, a vase filled with flowers from your garden, each choice brings authenticity and charm. When you let your home reflect what comforts you most, even the smallest living room can become a retreat. A place where you step in, put down the day, and simply feel at ease. That is the beauty of a cottage living room, timeless, honest, and wonderfully yours. There's something magical about the way plants transform a cottage. They don't just decorate, they breathe life into every corner, whispering freshness into the air and softening the edges of a room. In this sunny nook, trailing ivy spills gracefully from a wide open shelf, its leaves cascading like a gentle waterfall of green. Below, a potted fern sits proudly on a weathered stool, its fronds unfurling toward the light. Even a chipped enamel pitcher becomes a planter, cradling blossoms in a way that feels both humble and beautiful. Nothing is forced, nothing feels staged, it's simply nature, living alongside us. Step into the kitchen and the story continues. Here, the windowsill becomes a tiny indoor garden, lined with terracotta pots of rosemary, basil, and mint. Their fragrance mingles with the warmth of the sun, ready to be snipped for a meal or simply admired for their vitality. A pothose climbs gently along the open shelving, its tendrils weaving between bowls and jars. Against mint-colored cabinets and wooden countertops, the greenery becomes the brightest accent, proof that even small spaces can flourish with life. This approach to decorating is as practical as it is poetic. Herbs at your fingertips mean fresh flavors every day, while trailing vines add texture and movement without the need for expensive decor. And the secret lies in simplicity, a mug repurposed as a planter, a stool turned into a display stand, a sunny windowsill made into a garden. What makes these green touches so powerful is how they change the mood of a room. A kitchen feels warmer with basil by the sink. A living corner feels calmer with ivy reaching for the sunlight. Even a bedroom becomes a retreat when a garland of eucalyptus sways gently above white bedding. Plants invite us to slow down, to notice small changes, a new leaf, a bloom, the way light falls across their stems in the afternoon. In the end, greenery is not just about style. It's about presence, patience, and the joy of tending to something that grows. It teaches us that a home doesn't have to be perfect, it only needs to be alive. There's something magical about the way small details can transform a room. You don't need grand renovations or expensive pieces to breathe new life into your home. Sometimes it's the quiet vignettes, the tender corners, that whisper the loudest stories. In the soft light of a cottage living room, a rustic wooden side table becomes more than furniture. It becomes a memory keeper. A lace doily rests gently on its surface, topped with a green lamp, a stack of worn books, and a tiny vase of fresh daisies. Each element feels humble, yet together they tell a story of comfort, of quiet evenings spent in the glow of lamplight, with a favorite book at hand. You can easily recreate this scene yourself. A thrifted lamp painted in your favorite green hue, a handful of flowers gathered from the garden, and the patience to let every piece settle into harmony. Move into the kitchen, where shelves carry the simple poetry of everyday living. White ironstone bowls are stacked neatly, their gentle curves catching the light. A small herb, tucked inside a green enamel cup, adds freshness and fragrance, while vintage spice jars line up like little time capsules. Nothing feels forced here, everything looks collected over time, lived with, and loved. The key is balance. Vary the heights, cluster objects in odd numbers, and let empty space be part of the beauty. And then there's the little nooks, where nostalgia finds its home. A green lamp glowing against soft floral curtains, or a ceramic bird resting beside old books. It's these details that give a space its soul. When you decorate like this, you're not just styling objects, you're weaving together fragments of life into something whole, something deeply personal. The beauty of cottage style lies in its imperfection. A slightly frayed doily, a chipped enamel mug, a weathered tabletop, all of these carry history, warmth, and a gentle reminder. Home is not about perfection, but about presence. So as you wander through your own rooms, pause for a moment. Look at the small surfaces waiting quietly for your touch. With just a little imagination, and perhaps a sprig of green or a cluster of wildflowers, you can create vignettes that feel alive. Tiny worlds of charm and nostalgia, right inside your home. There's a quiet kind of magic that lives in a cottage kitchen. It's not about perfection or polished finishes, but about how the smallest things, an old mixing bowl, a jar of herbs, a stack of simple white plates, can feel like home. On open shelves, mint green enamelware and creamy pitchers rest together, their gentle colors echoing spring fields. A trailing pothose plant tumbles gracefully down from the top shelf, reminding us that even in the most functional spaces, nature belongs. And here lies a simple truth: you don't need much to make beauty bloom. A single potted herb in a mug, or lavender dried in a mason jar, brings life to an otherwise ordinary corner. The beauty of open shelves is their honesty. They don't hide clutter, so styling them becomes an act of living with intention. Stack bowls in pairs, vary heights with jars and pitchers, and don't be afraid of leaving empty space. A little air between objects makes the arrangement feel effortless rather than crowded. Notice how the wooden shelves paired with white beadboard walls create a canvas that feels both rustic and fresh. Against this backdrop, even the humblest objects, a glass jar of dried beans, or a daisy in a bud vase, begin to feel like treasures. The balance of green and white isn't just color, it's calmness, it's freshness, it's the promise of a new season waiting in every detail. And perhaps the most inspiring part? This is all within reach. These ideas don't demand expensive pieces or designer finds. They're built from the everyday, vintage dishes found in thrift shops, mason jars repurposed from the pantry, herbs grown on a windowsill. The kind of decor you create with your hands, with a little imagination, and a heart that leans toward simplicity. So, as you look at your own shelves, imagine what story they could tell. Would you bring in soft whites to ground the space? A splash of green to wake it up? Or maybe, just maybe, a single wildflower picked from the garden to remind you that beauty is always closer than it seems. There's something undeniably magical about a spring dining table dressed in green and white. It feels like an invitation to slow down, breathe, and savor the sweetness of simple moments. Imagine walking into a cottage dining nook where the light streams gently through lace curtains, spilling across a rustic whitewashed table. The chairs, painted in soft shades of sage and cream, feel like they've been there for generations, sturdy, welcoming, and familiar. On the table, small details weave a quiet poetry. Green vintage plates layered over crisp white chargers. Napkins tied with twine, each holding a sprig of rosemary, releasing a fresh herbal scent as guests take their seats. A ceramic bunny, whimsical yet timeless, sits at the center, reminding us that spring is both playful and gentle. These little touches don't cost much, yet they transform the mood entirely, a perfect example of how thoughtful styling can feel rich in meaning. Or perhaps the table is simpler still, just a bouquet of wildflowers freshly picked from a meadow, placed in a clear glass vase at the center. Daisies, buttercups, and sprigs of lavender create a tapestry of color against the soft green backdrop of painted chairs. Paired with plain white plates and clear glasses, the effect is both effortless and full of life. It's a reminder that beauty doesn't demand perfection. It thrives in what feels natural, collected, and real. What makes this kind of tablescape truly inspiring is how easy it is to recreate. Most of these elements you might already own: a few old chairs waiting for a coat of paint, mason jars that can double as vases, herbs from the kitchen garden, or even wildflowers picked on a walk. Layering textures is the secret here. The softness of lace curtains, the rough honesty of a weathered wooden table, the crispness of linen napkins. Together, they create harmony. And beyond the aesthetics, there's something deeply comforting about gathering around such a table. Whether it's a brunch with fresh croissants and steaming tea, or a casual weekday dinner with bread, soup, and laughter, the setting whispers of care, of thoughtfulness, of home. So, when you're styling your own spring dining table, remember this: it's less about achieving perfection and more about capturing a feeling. A feeling of warmth, welcome, and the quiet joy of the season. And with just a little imagination, you can bring that dreamy green and white cottage charm right into your own home. There's something magical about textiles in a cottage home. The way a simple throw can soften a room, how patterned pillows can bring joy, or how a quilt folded neatly at the foot of a bed instantly whispers comfort. In the bedroom, crisp white bedding becomes a canvas for spring when paired with leafy green pillow shams and a sage quilt. Add a woven basket filled with rolled throws and suddenly the space feels layered, thoughtful, and ready for quiet moments of rest. Step into the living room, and the story continues. A creamy sofa, dressed in stripes and florals, feels alive with pattern yet calm in palette. Notice how the soft green and white cushions complement a floral throw draped casually across the arm. Lace curtains filter the light, washing everything in a soft glow, while wicker baskets keep the space grounded and practical. The beauty of this look lies in its simplicity. It doesn't demand perfection, instead, it thrives on gentle layering. Mix stripes with florals, solids with patterns, and let natural fibers like linen and cotton do the talking. Every pillow, every blanket, every woven basket tells a story of comfort and ease. If you're looking for a DIY touch, start with what you already have. Swap out pillow covers with seasonal fabrics, fold a quilt across the sofa, or drape a throw on the end of your bed. Sometimes it's the smallest change that creates the biggest sense of renewal. Green and white together carry the freshness of springtime fields, bringing life and tranquility into your home. And when layered thoughtfully, they remind us that beauty is often found not in what is new, but in how we cherish and combine the familiar. Imagine stepping into a cottage kitchen where morning light pours in through soft curtains, scattering golden reflections across shelves lined with enamelware in shades of cream and spring green. The simplicity of it all feels almost cinematic. Glass jars filled with dried herbs, mismatched green mugs, a pot of rosemary leaning gently toward the sun. It is a space that celebrates the beauty of ordinary things, made extraordinary simply by the way they are displayed. What makes this style so captivating is how effortless it feels. A vintage enamel bowl doesn't just serve its purpose, it tells a story of timeless function. A plaid dish towel draped casually across the oven door brings a sense of softness and memory, as though it has always belonged there. You don't need to buy everything new. Much of the charm comes from collecting pieces over time, at flea markets, secondhand shops, or even family attics. The secret is not perfection, but the lived-in warmth of mismatched beauty. And then there's the stove, creamy white with its green kettle resting proudly on top. The small detail of a kettle in color, rather than plain stainless steel, changes the entire mood of the room. It turns making tea into a ritual. If you want to capture this feeling in your own home, start with just one or two accents: a set of vintage glass cups in green, a potted herb by the window, a stack of enamel plates rimmed in sage. Slowly, the layers build, until you find yourself in a kitchen that feels like it has grown with you. There is poetry in the everyday rituals of a cottage kitchen. The way sunlight catches a glass jar, the way green and white soften the edges of a room, the way fresh herbs bring scent and life into the air. These are not grand gestures but small, thoughtful details that invite you to pause, breathe, and savor the season. There's something magical about the way fresh florals transform a space. A room that might feel quiet and unassuming suddenly begins to hum with life when you place a simple jar of garden blooms on a rustic wooden table. The light filtering through the window dances on petals and glass, reminding you that beauty doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be honest. Imagine gathering wild daisies, lavender sprigs, or even a handful of eucalyptus leaves. You don't need expensive vases. An old milk bottle, a clear jar, or even a tin can become the perfect vessel. Their humble origins add charm, grounding the arrangement in everyday simplicity. And that's the very essence of cottage style. It doesn't try too hard. It embraces imperfection, letting natural textures and soft colors speak quietly for themselves. If you want to recreate this at home, don't overthink it. Place freshly cut blooms on a nightstand, let a glass jar hold hydrangeas on your dining table, or line up a collection of mismatched bottles on a shelf. The effect is effortlessly poetic, like stepping into a countryside retreat where time slows down. Adding florals is also one of the easiest DIY projects you can try. Even faux flowers can be made to look authentic when paired with greenery and placed in casual arrangements. What matters most is the way they soften the room, bringing freshness and warmth to every corner. Let your home tell its story through little vignettes like these. A chair draped with a striped throw, a weathered side table holding daisies, a row of bottles glowing with morning light, each detail whispers of comfort, of calm, of a life lived beautifully in the present moment. There's something quietly magical about giving forgotten objects a second life. A chipped green stool, once tucked away in a dusty corner, suddenly finds its purpose again as a pedestal for a lively fern. Its imperfections don't detract from the charm. They tell a story. They remind us that beauty often comes with age and history. And beside it, an old shutter, faded with time, is reborn as a functional rack, carrying woven baskets that feel as if they've always belonged. It's the kind of corner that whispers, use what you have, and let it shine. In another nook, a humble wooden ladder painted in sage green leans casually against the wall. Instead of climbing, it now cradles soft, folded throws and trailing plants. This is where practicality meets poetry, a display that feels intentional, yet effortless. Below, a woven basket sits patiently, holding extra blankets and books, reminding us that cottage decor is as much about comfort as it is about style. And then there's the kitchen, where creativity blossoms in the smallest details. A weathered enamel teapot transforms into a vase for freshly gathered wildflowers, its new role bringing joy to an ordinary day. A wooden crate, once overlooked, now becomes a charming storage space for green glass bottles, adding a gentle rustic rhythm to the shelves. What makes these ideas so inspiring is not the objects themselves, but the way they're reimagined. It's proof that cottage charm doesn't require shopping sprees or expensive decor. It invites you to see beauty in the old, to layer the past with the present, and to let every corner of your home tell a story uniquely yours. In every cottage, there lies a corner waiting to be claimed, a small sanctuary where books, tea, and quiet hours come together. Here, the story begins with a green armchair by the window, softened by a white fringed throw and a pillow patterned with blossoms. Sunlight pours through the glass, painting gentle stripes across the fabric. A candle flickers on the sill, surrounded by teacups and well-loved books. This is not just a seat, it is an invitation to pause, to breathe, to let the world slow down for a moment. Another nook, simple yet soulful, holds a slip-covered chair in fresh white. Beside it, a small sage-painted table cradles a steaming cup of tea and a vase of daisies. On the floor, a braided rug rests like a memory of handmade care, grounding the space in quiet comfort. It's proof that beauty doesn't require grandeur. Sometimes all it takes is a chair, a book, and a touch of green to soothe the spirit. Then, there is the alcove, a pocket of collected treasures. Shelves lined with vintage books and green glass bottles, each piece telling its own story of time and place. A wicker basket offers warmth with folded throws, while a soft mint cushion whispers, "Stay a little longer." The charm here lies in imperfection, in the feeling that everything was gathered slowly, lovingly, over the years. The secret of these spaces is their ease. Nothing is overstyled, nothing feels staged. They invite you to gather what you already have, a chair in need of a second life, a handful of bottles, a stack of books, a sprig of wildflowers. Layer them softly, let sunlight be your final touch, and suddenly, your home holds a corner that feels like a gentle embrace. In the end, these reading nooks remind us of a simple truth: tranquility is not bought, but created. With care, with presence, and with just a little imagination, anyone can carve out a retreat where spring lingers all year long. something magical about a cottage bedroom in spring, where every detail feels fresh, simple, and filled with gentle charm. In this corner, a white painted dresser stands gracefully, topped with a vivid green vase overflowing with wildflowers. It's a reminder that beauty doesn't need to be elaborate. A simple vessel, perhaps thrifted or inherited, can become the heart of the room when paired with freshly gathered blooms. Filtered sunlight dances through lace curtains, softening the walls and casting delicate shadows on the floor. This is the quiet elegance of layering textures: crisp cotton bedding, a crocheted throw, a braided rug in muted green, all working together to create a sanctuary that soothes rather than overwhelms. In another nook, the bed itself becomes the canvas. White linens breathe purity and calm, while sage green pillows with floral prints add just the right whisper of nature. Above it all, an aged mirror with a green frame reflects the morning glow, amplifying light and giving the room a timeless, collected over the years spirit. The charm of a cottage retreat is in its restraint. You don't need much to craft serenity: a handmade quilt folded neatly, a sprig of wildflowers on a nightstand, or a set of curtains that sway lightly with the breeze. These small gestures transform a simple room into a haven that feels alive with stories. And perhaps, that's the real invitation of cottage living: to slow down, to curate beauty with intention, and to let nature's palette of green and white carry peace into your home. It's not about perfection, it's about warmth, character, and a touch of poetry woven into everyday life. Step into this little cottage bathroom, and you'll realize how even the smallest of spaces can feel like a sanctuary when touched with simplicity and care. The soft green walls immediately soothe the mind, while crisp white details keep the air feeling bright and pure. A simple towel, embroidered with a delicate leaf motif, suddenly feels like more than fabric. It becomes part of a story, a whisper of spring woven into daily life. You don't need much to recreate this. Just a jar filled with layered bath salts or a handmade bar of soap can infuse personality into your bathroom, turning it into a space where rituals feel like moments of self-care. Look closer at the clawfoot tub framed by a sage green linen curtain. It stands as the heart of the room, humble yet elegant, a reminder of slower times. Nearby, a vintage stool cradles a pot of fern, its fronds spilling gently over the edges. It's a touch so simple, yet so powerful. Greenery has a way of breathing life into corners that might otherwise feel too still. If you have an old chair or stool at home, repurpose it with a coat of paint or let it wear its history proudly, and let it carry a plant that thrives in moisture and light. The harmony of wood, leaf, and linen makes bathing feel like stepping into nature. And then there are the shelves, white, airy, uncluttered. Glass jars filled with cotton balls, vintage green bottles catching the morning light, and a woven basket of neatly rolled towels. These are not just objects, they are quiet lessons in balance. Functional, yet so effortlessly beautiful. You might even find joy in collecting glass jars and bottles over time, letting them become part of the rhythm of your space. Add a sprig of eucalyptus in a small vase, and suddenly, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. What makes this bathroom so enchanting is not perfection, it's how every element feels loved, curated, and alive. Soft light, a touch of green, the quiet honesty of white, and objects chosen with intention. With just a few thoughtful changes, you too can craft a bathroom that feels less like a utility and more like a retreat. Because, in the end, the true magic of cottage living is not about excess or grandeur. It's about creating beauty in the simplest of ways, where every morning feels fresh and every evening feels restful. Imagine stepping outside your front door on a golden spring morning. The porch greets you with a gentle whisper of fresh air, where sunlight spills across painted wood and every detail feels like a soft invitation to slow down. A simple green bench, sturdy yet full of character, becomes the heart of this little corner. On it rests a humble enamel watering can, brimming with tulips and daffodils, their colors bursting like laughter after a long winter. The "Hello Spring" mat beneath your feet isn't just a welcome sign, it's a cheerful reminder that new beginnings start here, at the threshold of home. Elsewhere, an old rocking chair leans casually against the siding, its white paint gently weathered by time. Green floral cushions breathe life back into its frame, making it the perfect spot for quiet conversations or the simple joy of listening to birdsong. By its side, a wicker basket overflows with daisies and potted herbs, a charming mix of beauty and practicality, flowers for the eyes, herbs for the kitchen. Even the smallest eucalyptus wreath on the door makes the entire porch feel alive, natural, and lovingly cared for. That's the secret to a dreamy cottage porch. It doesn't need to be perfect, only personal. A coat of green paint on an old bench, a thrifted basket turned into a planter, or a few hanging blooms by the doorway, each touch makes the space more than decor. It becomes a story, a reflection of life's simplest pleasures. So, whether you have a wide veranda or just a narrow step, you can transform it into a sanctuary. Let it greet you every morning with freshness, and every evening with peace. Because in the language of cottages, the porch is more than an entrance, it's a warm embrace, the first hello and the last good night.